Good morning. Thank you all for making the effort to be here so bright and early, especially after last night's party. I'm amazed we're all here. I'm especially amazed that I'm here after that. Welcome to Project Management Tools for Success. My name is John Bondeson. I'm a project manager in our Miami office. And I've used Vision for many years. I was part of the initial beta test back in 2004, our own internal beta test, and then our subsequent rollout of it firm-wide, and then I was involved in training our project managers. And over the years, I've really come to appreciate the features and the tools that Vision has to help in my day-to-day work. Our agenda for this morning is to look at project management and what some of the basic elements are. Then for each element, we'll look at how Vision can support it and what the tools are available to help increase project managers' effectiveness and efficiency. First, we're going to talk about what project management is. As project managers, we're always looking at requirements, what our clients and what our team's needs are, and then we translate those into objectives and we break them down into steps. We bring the important elements of project management, including quality, scope, time, cost, into balance to achieve our stakeholders' goals and objectives. We're right in the middle of it. Some of the important elements of project management that we'll be focusing on are time, which include schedules and managing labor, costs, which includes budgets, both internal budgets and external, our clients' budgets, human resources, including human or team development and selection of team members, communication, internal and external, risk identification, mitigation, and the overall quality of our deliverables. We'll talk about each one individually and then look at the tools that Vision has that help support it. Time is one of the elements that we actually have the most control over. You know, by the time we start a project, many of the other elements of project management are already fixed. Our overhead costs are fixed, our direct labor costs are fixed, the risks have already been taken, even if they haven't been identified, they've been taken, and our team has been assigned. So what do we really have control over? As project managers, what we have control over is time. As we accurately allocate our team members' time by phases and deliverables and track the changes as they occur, we have the largest influence over the success of our projects and our profitability. During the project, then, as we keep our plans up to date, we get back the information from Vision that we need to stay on track. So what does Vision have to offer in time management? Well, let's take a look. Here are some of the ways that we measure and allocate time and thereby help track our fees and our profits. Now, I've highlighted the ones that I often use and the ones that we'll be talking about here. The top-down method works when the fee is already fixed or given. For whatever reason, you're given a fee and you need to produce a scope of work within that fee with a profit left over. Perhaps the fee is derived from a cost per square foot or a percentage of total construction cost, but regardless, the fee is divided into phases or labor codes and then spread over the time allocated to produce the deliverables. The initial estimate probably won't match the actual time needed. That happens all the time. So we need to plan, we need to update our plans regularly as the project unfolds. So here's an example. This is a fee breakdown from an actual project from the proposal. And let's look at how Vision helps us to allocate these fees among our standard phases. From the planning module, we go to the labor plan. We select the labor tab, and then we see this grid. First, on the right side, we prepare our work breakdown structure and put our team resources. And then for each one of the phases. Now, I should mention that you can prepare your work breakdown structure in the top-down tab and then select Update Plan, as you know, to get the work breakdown structure here in the Labor tab. But in our firm at RTKL, we encourage project managers to prepare their work breakdown structure directly on this plan and dispense with the top-down tab step. That's so that they don't go back later and think that they can update it and then press Update Labor Plan and then erase everything that they've worked hard on the labor plan. The second thing that we do is establish the dates for each one of the phases. And then third, on the right side of the grid, in the compensation column, we enter the amount of fee for each phase from the proposal where the arrows point. Vision automatically totals up the fee to the column and then spreads the hours for each team member by the phase dates that you've already set up. Now, in this example, all of the project phases are in the plan, but there are times when you'll create a separate plan for each phase, a separate task plan that roll up to the main project number. Now, when you look across the grid here, you'll see that where the circled entry is, you'll see that Vision's allocations results in fractions of hours. That's because it is spread evenly. So I like to go back and change these to whole numbers or half days or whatever block of time makes sense for the project and the team. This is also really good thinking time for me because as I'm doing this, I can review what each person is doing and make adjustments as I go. So this is what the labor grid looks like after I've tweaked the hours. This process also really lets me think about how reasonable it is to get the work done in that amount of time and identify any sort of challenges or choke points. Now is a good time, this is the good time to review this plan with your team for their input and for them to see exactly what they need to, what needs to be done by when in order for the project to be successful. And as a group, we can discuss how to handle problems. And I should mention that I have this plan set up by weeks, but you can have it set up by months or whatever time frame works for the size of the project. Let's take a look at another method. This is the analogous method, and it's a way of comparing two projects. You know, many times we need to establish a fee for a new project or a proposal, and we identify a similar project that we've recently done, and then we use that fee. And that's terrific to the extent that that project was successful and made a profit, but if not, you could be repeating a mistake. Well, Vision can help us make this comparison. I go to the project review from the applications menu, and I select the projects that I want to compare. And then I like to pull them up like this side by side and look at the data. In this example, there are two different projects for the same client with similar scopes of work. Now, comparing the profit variance amounts, and taking a look at the data here, we see that both projects are about 95% complete, and they are both almost breaking even. Now, our client actually did come back to us and ask us to submit a proposal for a third project with a similar scope of work. But without this data, our client really would have been in a very strong position to insist that we do the third project for the same fee that we did the first two. But with this data, we were able to demonstrate that even though we believe we worked as efficiently and effectively as possible, we really needed more fee to produce the quality of project that they wanted and that we wanted. You can make this comparison in the summary tab as well. Another way to allocate time is the proportion method, and it can be applied in a couple of ways. The way shown here is just very simply the time is divided by the percentage of work effort needed for each one of the disciplines. And this is usually done while the fee is still being calculated even before it's submitted in a proposal. Then the plan is prepared for each discipline using their percentages. Another proportion method is one that we use commonly and almost instinctively. The time allocation is a portion for each phase of the work. We can either establish these amounts by historical records, by standard definitions, by client expectations, or directives that we get from our clients via an RFP. You know, I really like how in an RFP they tell us how we should break our fees down by phases, but you know, that happens. Regardless, Vision makes it easy to allocate the percentage, as we'll see right here in this example. After setting up the work breakdown structure and assigning team members and establishing your start and stop dates for each one of the phases, we take the total number of hours available and put the appropriate percentage of those hours in the grid at each phase as shown in the circled numbers here. Now, Vision then automatically spreads the hours equally among team members and in the labor grid across start and stop dates for each one of the phases. Then you can adjust them where the arrow indicates for those working full-time on the project, for example, and those who are working part-time or have specialized roles. Let's look at another method. This is the bottom-up method. Here we build the total time for a project required for each phase by figuring out how much time is needed to achieve each milestone. A helpful guideline for me has been the PMBOK 880 rule. PMBOK is a project management body of knowledge and is published by PMI, the Project Management Institute. And this rule says that no work package should be less than 8 hours or 1 day, and no package should be more than 80 hours or 2 weeks. This helps us to think about the time needed for each task and deliverable by person, by day, and by week. To build the time, again, we start with a work breakdown structure and add our team members and in our phases, start and stop dates as shown here. Then, depending upon the size of the project, we can allocate the hours for each person in multiples of days and weeks. And in this example, the project is small and we can think of it in terms of by phase. We proceed with each phase until we've allocated the total hours to complete each phase for the entire project. You'll notice that the total planned bill is a little over $160,000 in this example. Now, if we think this is fair and the client is willing to pay this amount, we're all set, we're in pretty good shape, we're ready to go. But if, on the other hand, we believe that we'll never get this much fee, we'll need to adjust the hours in the grid to reduce our planned amount of labor. So if you remember in the top-down example, we had a fee of $140,000, and that was for the same project. This is the actual fee for that project. But this might represent the maximum amount that the client has said that they would pay, and you've agreed to take the project for that amount, or you have enough information about the market to know what a fair fee is, and you won't be considered for the project if you go any higher than this amount. So we go back to our bottom-up labor plan, which gave us a fee of $161,000, and you can adjust the total hours for each phase via the circled numbers to lower the planned bill amount. Now, when you change the hours in those circled areas, Vision automatically adjusts the hours for each person in the labor grid proportionately to the original hours that you had. So during this process, it's also good to remember that billing rates have profit already built in. And if you know what that profit is, and your planned bill winds up a little bit more than your target fee, you can calculate how much less profit you might be willing to take for the new planned hours. If this is an hourly instead of a lump sum or fixed fee project, you can use the planned cost column on the right side times the target multiplier to get a more accurate picture of the total fee required. By entering the amount of the fee from the proposal on the right side of the grid in the compensation column, we can compare our planned bill to the compensation that we know that we're going to get. And we can play with the planned hours to get there. Again, keeping in mind that our rates have profit already built in. If you know what your percentages are, you can calculate how much less profit you're willing to take in order to allow your team members a little bit more time. Another project management activity that Vision can help us with is project schedules. From the the Labor tab, complete the work breakdown structure for your team members and adjust your start and stop dates for each phase. Now, here's a tip that I like to remind for project managers. When you're adjusting the dates for each phase, they get tired of going and adjusting the dates for each one of the team members. You can right-click on the circled date there and select Match Children, and all of the dates below will match that date. But if you want, you can have different start and stop dates for each team member as required. By the way, Vision has project restrictions that enable or that prevent people from charging or entering on their timesheets anything outside of what's been planned in your project plan. And in our firm, our project accountants set up these parameters, and we use all of them. We have as many restrictions on it as Vision allows. So once you have these these dates planned, it's easy to run a report. For example, the resource utilization, the resource planned and actuals, as shown here. This report shows each team member's planned hours by week, and you can email it to team members. Also, team members, of course, can find their planned hours via timesheets as well when they select copy from planning. Now, so far, we've looked at time and planning and allocation in the future. Vision is also where to go to find time already spent in the past. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the labor summary report, which you get from the reports on the applications menu. Here you can see that the circled numbers are current hours, current billing, job-to-date hours, percent complete or expended. And it's shown by phase for the entire project. You can click on any one of the numbers to drill down. And here's the labor detail when you drill down. You'll notice here that under each entry, there's a comment, and at RTKL, via the project restrictions, we require team members to post comments for each entry on their timesheets. We think that this is a good practice. It helps project managers see what time has been spent for. But as months go by on a project, it's really hard for a team member to remember what they did on June 17th, for example. But when comments are entered, it's easier to help reconstruct what the work effort was if you need to justify labor, especially to your client. Here's one of my favorite tools. It's the resource utilization module. It's an interactive tool that lets you see the projects and hours that each team member is scheduled for. The module can be set up for a studio or for an office or for an entire firm, and how you use it really depends upon how you schedule your resources. In our office, our resources or team members are shared across 4 studios, so we select all the team members for those studios. If resources are rarely or never used outside the studio, then it can be set up just for that individual studio or for an office, or however, whoever is doing the scheduling and managing of personnel. There are 3 colors that Vision automatically uses. Green means that a person is scheduled correctly. It shows up a little yellow there, but it's green. Or within 20% of their 40 hours per week. Blue means that a person is underutilized, and red is that they are 20% or greater over their targeted hours. The benefit to us of using this function is that we can check the utilization of team members each week right during our scheduling meeting. We can resolve conflicts right on the spot with all of the project managers right there and figure out how to allocate team members' time so that all of our deadlines are met. To set up the module, you can go to the Applications menu and select Resource Utilization. Select the date range at the top and the employees to be included, and you can create save searches as well. On the Options tab, you can sort employees alphabetically or from least utilized to most utilized, or vice versa. And during a typical project manager meeting, I'll pull up this module and look at it in all 3 ways, in all 3 formats. So once you have the studio or the office set up, you can drill down as shown here in this slide. And you just click at the plus sign next to a person's name, and that's how you drill down and open this grid up. You can see here in this example that Maria is only scheduled for 37 hours for the first week shown and should be available for 3, so you can add them right here. In the next week, she's scheduled for 52 hours, but 16 of those are for a proposed project that may never happen, so you may not worry about that. The following week, she's only scheduled half time, so you can adjust the hours right here. Since this tool is interactive, in our firm, only one person in each office has access to this tool. And this is because if you make changes to a person's time here on the grid and then save it, it actually changes in the project plans, and you can create a great deal of confusion and anger among project managers if this isn't handled with their full knowledge and their participation. Another favorite? Yes?
How do the project managers schedule people if they aren't aware of how they're being utilized in other studios?
Well, they find out in the next week's meeting that they have taken somebody. You know, it really requires communication outside of just this tool. So, yeah, sometimes that's tricky. And in our project manager meetings, I'm sure we all have project managers meetings that get a little dicey when people are fighting over resources. But this is certainly one of the best ways to get the resources that you want, is to go in and schedule them in your project plan. And then we fight about it. Another favorite tool of mine is labor resources planned and actuals. This report can be scheduled to go out automatically on a regular basis. It's another way of looking at exactly the same information as in the resource utilization module. It's not interactive like the other is, but it's very helpful during project manager meetings as a checklist for each project to look at this time and the labor requirements for it. Now, earlier, we said that we would look at Vision's contributions to time, cost, human resources, communication, risk, quality, and so forth. So now I'd like to shift our attention from time to cost. What we've been looking at with time directly impacts cost. You know, as project managers, we handle costs and budgets both for our firms and for our clients. But I'd like to focus on internal costs and how we either manage or influence them within our firms. Now, these costs include direct labor, overhead and expenses, both direct and reimbursables. So what are some of the tools that Vision has that can help us? Well, for an easy way to look at project-related costs, I go to projects under the Info Center on the Applications menu. And you'll get a summary of the complete project record. The tabs there that we have include, you know, accounting, billing, budgets and revenue, collections data, among many other tabs. But a feature that I use regularly is budget and revenue. You can see the percent complete here for labor, expenses, and the overall percent complete for the project. And this is a good measure where you are relative to your deliverables for the project. And for a more detailed view, you can go to Project Review. And when you select Project Review at the top here at the arrow, you'll get data on labor, overhead, and expenses. Now, another way to get to Project Review, if you're in the planning module in a labor plan, you can right-click on the box next to a phase or a project name, and then this drop-down menu will appear and you can scroll down and select Project Review. Either way that you navigate there, when Project Review comes up, you can see the data on the General tab. There's a General tab and an Accounts Receivable tab. This is the General tab. It shows the cost of labor, fees, overhead, expenses, and variances. Caps on any reimbursables are also shown here, as well as the total hours spent to date. At the bottom is the overall percent complete of the project, and we'll touch on the Accounts Receivable tab a little bit later when we talk about risks and payment. The Analysis tab, you can get a snapshot here of where you stand for the planned hours in the project plan. Now, if your plan is actualized, that is that your job-to-date hours match the actual hours, then the Analysis tab can let you know the percent completes for labor. If you're tracking direct expenses and they're accurately listed in the grid as to when they'll be incurred, their percent completes are shown accurately as well, as is the overall percent complete for the project. Here on the summary tab of the project plan, we see a more complete breakdown of planned and actual cost, past, present, and future. Now at the bottom of this screen, there's a cost summary. And this is a good place to keep your eye on the EAC, the estimate at completion. And I sort of think of the EAC as a magic crystal ball. And it tells you where you're going to be at the end of the project, given the job-to-date labor that you have already spent and the planned hours that you have for the future. Very quickly, consultant fees are also costs that we want to keep to track carefully, especially if they're direct consultants. Direct meaning included in our fee and paid out of our fee. At RTKL, we set up direct consultant fees on a separate project plan, a separate task number, since this revenue needs to be recognized on a different schedule than our own fee. And this is easily done on the consultant tab. In this example, each consultant is listed and their fee is entered. And if the consultant's work will parallel our own, then that's fine. You can use the project dates. But if a consultant's work will be done at the beginning of the project, for example, in the design phase only, then you should allocate their fee only for those dates. And so you can adjust those dates to their involvement to match their deliverables. Then we can, if we want to do that, we can enter consultants' fees broken down as to when they are actually expected to hit the project. This helps alert accounting in their preparation of billing and helps them verify consultant expenses as invoices are received and as the costs are incurred. It's also helpful if you need to prepare an invoice schedule for your client as they prepare for their project funding. We can track direct expenses in the same manner. Again, direct expenses are those that are included in our fee and paid out of it. We're very concerned about those. We're not nearly as concerned about reimbursable expenses, which sort of are what they are and are billed in addition to our fee. On the expense tab, we enter all of the direct expenses that are included in the contract, and then by default, of course, Vision will spread these costs evenly across the dates of the project. But if you know when they're going to actually hit the project, you can enter them in on the date grid, on the dates of the grid, so that you can track when they'll be incurred and when they'll have to be paid. So there were several examples of how Vision can help us track costs. I'd like to turn our attention to people and our teams. You know, human resources is just a huge arena encompassing everything from recruiting and finding talent to training and investing in them and their career development. You know, as project managers, we often work hand in hand with HR as our teams evolve and as they grow, and as we're trying to match our project needs. We need to know how to plan to use talent. We need to bring the right people to the project in order to get our projects done successfully. And Vision does have tools to help us. The first and most obvious is scheduling people in the labor grid, and this is what we do all the time. But perhaps we're looking for a specific skill or a discipline. If you right-click in the box next to a resource name, you can select Resource Search. Then this dialog box appears, allowing you to search for a specific skill within your firm. In the box near the center of page, you'll enter what you're looking for, and then you check the skill required box to the right. To do that, first you enter the job description that you're looking for. Now in our firm, when I enter environmental graphics designer, for example, in the skill box, and then second, I click the skill required box. I can click the search button at the top where the number is pointing. Or the number 3 is pointing. Then in the results box at the bottom at number 4, all 11 of the graphics designers in our firm are shown. Then I can scroll through them. I can highlight one, select one, And via the select bottom at number 5, the select button at number 5 at the bottom, that person will actually appear in my project plan on my labor grid. Another excellent tool that helps when you're selecting team members for project is utilization. You enter the name of the team member on your labor grid and then right-click, and from the drop-down menu you go to utilization. And then this box here appears showing the utilization ratio of the team member and a list of all the projects that they are scheduled for. It shows the percentage of their time for each one of the projects. You can look at the utilization on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis by selecting the scale in the upper right and then selecting apply. Notice at the bottom the total utilization is shown, and if a person's utilization is 95% or greater, these boxes turn red. So the benefits to us of these two tools, resource search and utilization, is that they ultimately help increase our utilization ratio. Resource search helps you find available staff, and utilization helps you be sure that they're billable. So communication is one of the most important elements of project management, and Vision does have features both help us both internally and externally. And I have an example of each. For internal communication, we have developed, used Vision to create project comments. We access it from the Info Center on the Applications menu, and it's a list of all projects sorted by Project Manager and Project Control Manager, or PCM. In our firm, there's one PCM, Project Control Manager, in each office who oversees the use of Vision. And only PCMs and finance personnel have access to this, but by clicking on the job number, a comments field comes up, and it looks like this. Now, each month, and minimally once a quarter, but ideally each month, project control managers meet with each project manager to review the status of their projects. And this meeting covers everything from schedules and deliverables, finances, ad services, aged receivables, percentages complete, anything that really pertains to the managing and successful completion of the project. Now, in the comments field, where the red oval is, the project control manager enters a summary of the status of the project on a monthly basis. And special risks are noted, and troubled projects can be tracked more closely, either to provide more support for the project manager or to make provisions for potential losses. After the comments are written, we click Add Comments at the bottom of the screen, and the comments then appear on the right by date. And then finance and accounting personnel can get a summary of these comments. This is the summary of the comments. Access from the Info Center, and finance personnel can review the comments in this window and scan for any sort of risk issues that have been flagged. The status of ad services, for example, any major change in EAC, aged receivables, general comments, or any sort of confidential comments that the project control manager might have written. Then they can click on the blue underlined entry for the complete text if they want to read that. So this is a real time saver for our accounting people to look for specific information about projects as they're preparing their monthly reports. An example of an external tool for communication is access to invoices. And how often do we need to follow up on invoices? Well, I really love that we can pull up an invoice that may be past due and email it directly to our client or to their accounts payable people while we're on the phone with them following up on it. It's a real time saver, and it can be done each and every time that same invoice seems to get lost. The next project management element that I'd like to talk about that's supported by Vision is risk. You know, risk is just an inherent part of our profession, and we're always looking for ways to identify it and to mitigate it. And, you know, some of the risks that we face on our projects, it includes like terms and conditions or lack of them in our proposals and contracts, not communicating adequately with our team members or our client, certainly not getting paid is a risk, potentially costly errors and omissions in our documents or our processes are risks, construction defects of various kinds and for various reasons are also risks. And Vision does have some good features to help us manage this risk. One of the features, we can call up accurate, current information about our contracts, invoices, payments, and communicate that directly through Vision. But first, I'd like to share an application that RTKL created in Vision to help us assess risk before we even prepare a proposal. We call it Go, No Go, and it's accessed through the Info Center. The purpose of this application is to help determine how much time and effort, how many of our resources that we want to devote to pursuing a particular project opportunity. But the Go, No Go process helps us also evaluate how this opportunity fits into our strategic business plan. And it also helps us evaluate the reputation and the credit worthiness of potential clients. Keith Williamson, RTKL's controller, developed this application and presented it here at this conference on Tuesday. And his presentation is titled Proposal Go, No Go Process. And it's session PS 147. So if you'd like more information about this, you can download his PowerPoint presentation online. But once we have a project, we need to execute contracts and agreements. And, you know, in the enthusiasm of starting new work, we found that getting documents signed and executed really seems to fall through the cracks. And there are many reasons why this happens. You know, attorneys are still negotiating contracts after the project's already begun. So we really need to track all of these agreements so that accounting and VPs can see at a glance what agreements are still outstanding. On the applications menu under reporting, under project, we have created 3 specific reports that help us track agreements. One is to track contracts, one is for proposals, and one is for consultant agreements. And each project manager has access to these directly from their dashboard, as shown in the red circle here, where they can select these reports. And here's what the reports look like. Now, when a project manager clicks on this, only his or her own projects show up. So, and if the report is blank, you're good to go. That means all of your agreements are executed and they're on file with accounting. But if a project of yours shows up on the list, you need to get your documents signed. The same holds true for proposals. We make a distinction at RTKL between signed proposals and what triggers the need for a signed contract. So we track both, and many times a project can move from one area to the other, from one list to the other. Consultant agreements, we also need to do the same thing because risk increases if we're working with a consultant on our client's behalf and we do not have a signed agreement with them indicating, you know, insurance requirements and terms and conditions. So, this information is entered manually by the project accountants. Okay, so they enter it there, and then they take it off the list once they have this signed agreement. Now, we've done these reports in version 6 of Vision, and I understand version 7. There's a contract management feature that functions very much like this, so you don't have to create the reports like we've done here. Aging receivables represent risk as well, and Vision makes it very easy to track them. So remember that way to get to project review. In the upper right here, there's a small screenshot as a reminder of how to get there from your labor plan. You can click on the small box and then select project review. Once you, if you want to see an invoice, first you can just click on the line, and then second, preview invoice, select preview invoice. Remember what we were saying about accessing invoices that can help in communication? Well, it can help us to get paid sooner too, which mitigates risk. So when the invoice comes up, you can review it, and at the top of the screen, again, there's that email icon so that you can send it to your client, again, for the third time to get paid. So what we have discussed about how vision, so far we've taken a look at how vision can help us manage time, cost, communication, human resources, and risk. And as we conclude, I'd like to touch on the ultimate consideration, which is quality. And quality, I think, is the ultimate result that we strive for in our work. And it can be looked at actually as the sum of all that we've been talking about. But quality can mean different things at different times to different people. And I think it's something that we sort of instinctively know and sense, but sometimes have a hard time defining. One definition that I like very much for project managers is that quality is delivering a scope of work exactly on time, on budget, and to the requirements. And this really makes sense to me because that makes quality definable, measurable, and attainable. So if we define quality as delivering a scope of work, we can see that all of the vision applications that we've talked about really support quality. These tools help us keep things in alignment and balance. And there's still another way that we can use vision to help increase quality and track project changes as they occur. So how often does your scope of work change? It probably seems like it never stays the same. So tracking the scope, fee changes, ad services are really essential to delivering a quality scope of work. So on the project data tab of a vision plan, there is planning notes. There's a planning notes box. And we find that this is ideal for entering every activity and change as it occurs. We put the latest notes on top so it's easier to track the most recent activity or change to the project. So if every change is noted, there'll be a written history of the project activities by date that involve anything to do with fees, scope, and tasks. All of the details can be captured in sequence to help manage time, cost, labor resources, and risk, and of course, ultimately quality. So in summary, looking at the Vision database, via the various portals and the reports that it has, allows us to view and manage the project data in different ways to keep the basic elements of project management in balance and moving forward. So what we've looked at then are the basic elements of project management: time, cost, human resources, communication, mitigating risk, alongside the tools that Vision, some of the tools that Vision has to help us work more efficiently and effectively, and then achieve the quality that we're all striving for. So I'm sure some of you have your own favorite tools, and we'd like to hear about those, and if you have any questions. And I would like to go back and think and talk a little bit more about your first question too in a minute. Yes?
When you were creating that plan and you reduced the hours to match your budget,
Yes.
doesn't that affect the resource planning? So if you're reducing, if it's really going to take the amount of time that you thought that didn't match your budget, you still need to keep track of other things.
You mean to go and change all the time in the labor grid as well? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I think it artificially represents the utilization if you're going to reduce the amount of hours just to match your budget. If it's really going to take more hours,
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but the idea is to reduce the number of hours so that your plan.
it's going to take that reduced amount of hours.
Yes, yes. Yeah, you really do have to reduce the number of hours, yeah, in order for that to happen. Yes?
I have my own question, but just to reply to this.
Okay.
It would, but in reality, when they put in that, we wanted to find places where you can save money, not to do it in an automatic way that every task has to be.
That's an excellent point. As you're doing that, yeah, you need to think about how you can do certain tasks a little bit more efficiently. You're not just reducing hours willy-nilly or equally throughout the entire plant. That's a very good point. Yes, thank you. And I do, you had a question as well?
When the percent complete the project review comes from the resource plan,
I'm sorry?
the percent complete on the project review that
Yes.
last number,
Yes.
does it come from resource planning?
Yeah, it comes from planning as well as the actual job to date spent. It's a real percent complete. It's calculated based upon hours spent to date and what you have planned in the future.
So it's the ESE calculations?
Yes. So it's that.
The second thing, do you use provisional rates?
Do we use what?
Provisional rates, or do you use rate tables and resource planning?
We use the actual, we use the rates from each project category. We don't use actual real labor costs. We use build costs, not the labor costs. Does that make sense?
Provisional rates, or you go through rate tables?
Professional rates.
Now, if there is a raise in between, does it consider that? Like, let's say I started in October and then we had a raise in January.
Yes, it does. It does. It takes that into account. Yes. Yeah, and for long term, it also takes into account any rates that we have planned in the future. They're all built in. Yes, it does do that. Yes.
You state, I think, that your PCMs meet with your project managers.
Yes.
On regular intervals.
Yes.
Once a month, or
Once a month. Yes. They do.
and only the PCMs have access to the planning tool.
That's correct. Only a specific person in our office that happens to be the PCM, me, has access to that tool, to the interactive aspect of that tool, to be able to change anything in it that would affect a project plan. I did want to go back and address your earlier question. You said, well, how do you resolve this when one person might be asked for by 2 or 3 different people? And I sort of answered glibly, but about fighting about it in a project manager meeting. But the way we handle it is when a new project comes in, during our project manager meeting, we identify new projects and we start talking about how we're going to staff them and who's available to do it. And we really sort of work that out even before the project managers go back and do their plans. So we have a good idea about who's available to do the work. I didn't mean to blow that off like that. Okay. So, yes.
You're talking about rates that help you plan. Is your rate pulling from your employee record, or have you identified in the planning module a specific labor rate table that you have set up?
We pull from a rate table, and it's by employee category. It's not actual labor. And we do that just so that we can spread this information for everybody in the firm without worrying about the confidentiality of payroll. Yeah. So, yes, sir.
I noticed that you have some overhead costs that you lump into the project, and that's a little bit different than the way my company does it. All the overhead is separated, and only billable hours get charged to the project. Could you explain why you do it that way and what benefit there is to it?
By showing overhead. In the summary tab, we actually did show an overhead rate that's separate from our costs. So we do show labor as a real cost, overhead as a multiplier to come up with our total cost to date. So I'm not, I mean, that,
The system estimates your other admin costs.
yeah.
It isn't actually focused on software, it calculates it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Yes, since you said you guys have a lockdown where if it's not a planned hour, employees can't enter a timesheet to it.
That's right.
So in effect, you're saying you have no write-offs, you have no over-servicing or over-commitment.
Well, we do, but we handle them. We handle them differently.
Well, how do you handle that if you've got it locked down so tight that time spent on a job can't be coded there? Then what mechanism do you have to keep your true project cost correct?
Okay. If a person, and I think if I understand your question, if I understand it correctly, if a person cannot charge anything out of their of what they've been planned for, and they don't have enough planned hours for 80 hours for their or 40 hours for their week, then some of that time is going to have to go into admin or some other cost bucket, and that needs to be reviewed and signed off by a VP that week before the timesheet can be done. That's how we control it, and then we decide how we're going to handle those hours.
How you're adversely affecting your planning capabilities in the future if you don't know for sure how many hours it took to do that task.
You were asking about actually taking more hours than we planned.
Right.
Okay, so if we take more hours than that are planned, we really encourage everybody to put hours that are accurately. So if, and this is what really happens, somebody actually put in more time than what they were planned for, they have to go to the project manager, and the project manager has to put more time in the plan for them to have done it. That's how we do it, and it happens every Wednesday morning, and there's a mad scramble for all the project managers to go and add more time to their timesheets, and that's how we handle it. Does that answer? Okay. Yes?
Do you have to set up the program that way?
No, you don't have to set it up that way. We've locked it down that tight in our office. Not every office in RTKL is locked down as tight as ours is, but we do it just because we're small enough when we can control it, and it makes me happy. So, yes.
You're talking about the labor categories. We have noticed that if we have an employee that is promoted to another category, that it is actually going back and changing our plans from prior time to prior time. We found a solution to actually solve that problem.
That's a good problem. That's a good question. Would you mind stating it one more time?
With the labor categories,
Yes.
it's going by labor category.
Exactly.
We have an employee that's actually just been promoted, so their category has changed. It's going off of their employee record. So when you change their category, it's going back and changing their billable rates for the prior time, even though they were not at that period earlier.
Right. And so what does that do to the project plan? It actually increases the cost, and it does, and project managers get upset about that every springtime when promotions are announced, because they go into their project plans and they see their costs have gone up. Yes, that's true, and that's reality, and that's what happens. And there's no other way that we have to control it other than doing that.
The other thing we have figured out is actually listing them by person,
Uh-huh.
maintenance days,
Yeah.
instead of doing it by category.
Yes, sir.
There is a solution to that.
Okay.
The rate table that you established as an effective date. So if you put an effective date and then and they will let you enter another record for the same employee. So if your project is more than one fiscal year, you can use two rates for the same employee.
Yes, you can do that, and that's a good solution, so that it escalates over time. You've got it sort of built in. Okay, thank you very much.